Night can stay on the water while we begin. The deck is still damp, the ropes smell like pine and salt, and a soft drum counts out the first strokes before the sun even looks up. You are on a small ship in the eastern Mediterranean around 1500 BCE, where crews rose with the sea breeze and slept with the shore wind. People often imagine bronze helmets and heroes. The truth is quieter and harder. How did they eat and drink without turning sick? How did they find their way with no compass? And what did a full day of work actually feel like in hands and lungs? Those are the small lamps we will light tonight. We will travel by linen sail, jars of water, and by the calm guesses of historians who read old wrecks like long, wet letters. We will explain why the crew beached the boat at dusk, why the sky's star pattern was a map you learned like a song, and why a jar of pitch was worth more than a poem. Keep your breathing slow. In a moment, the drum will start, and the day will open. Let the first light come as a thin silver on the water. The boat is already awake. A soft voice counts time that your pulse soon learns, and wet wood answers with its small sounds. The world is narrow here, hull or breath, and the light push of a land breeze running its fingers over the sea. This is the hour when a Bronze Age crew begins its day, around the time when birds argue along the shore and stars fade with reluctance. People think of heroes in bright metal, but the first truth is wood and rhythm. In a moment, we will meet the people who keep that rhythm from breaking. There is a captain, but not the kind who shouts for show. He watches more than he speaks. He knows the line of the coast by memory and the mood of the sea by smell. Near him stands the steersman, hands on a pair of long steering oars that ride the stern like quiet wings. When the sea changes, those oars feel it first. They bite the water and keep the bow honest. A third figure is the oarmaster, the keeper of pace. He may tap a drum or use a simple chant that rises and falls like breath. In a moment, we will step closer to the oars themselves, because your hands will soon learn their weight. Rowers sit on low benches, bare feet finding balance on the hull's ribs. The oars are not light toys. They are levers that ask your back and legs to join your arms. A clean stroke starts with a quiet catch, blade kissing water without slap. Then a pull that is more smooth and strong. Then a release that returns the blade flat to the air. If you rush, you splash. If you fight, you tire your neighbor. The crew is a braid, not a bundle, and the oarmaster keeps the braid tight. In a moment, we will climb over the gunwale with our eyes and feel what holds these pieces together. The boat is a wooden animal. Many historians say, stitched and pegged rather than nailed stiff. Planks meet like clasped hands, joined with small pegs and laced with plant fiber where needed, so the hull flexes with the sea instead of breaking against it. Between the seams sits resin pine, pitch warmed and worked with fiber so the water stays where it belongs. This is not a crude trick. It is a living choice. A rigid hull is like a stubborn back. A flexible hull is like a dancer's spine. In a moment, we will follow a hand to the mast, because wind is the other engine, and it wakes when the sun does. The mast rises from a strong plank, set like a keel's cousin. A single square sail of flax hangs rolled and tied, waiting for wind. Flax is plant cloth, smooth and a little thirsty. It swells when damp and holds a breeze better for it. The yard, the long beam that holds the top of the sail rests in its cradle. Lines run to rings and cleats that your fingers will learn, like buttons on a shirt. When the captain nods, hands untie, the sail drops, and air turns into a gentle hand on the ship's back. In a moment, we will feel how the crew shifts when the sail lifts, because bodies must learn a new balance. Under oars, the boat's heart beats fast. Under sail, it lengthens its stride. Rowers still keep their oars shipped and ready, but they breathe deeper, watching the canvas for those tiny folds that tell of gusts and slack. The steersman uses his paired oars to keep the winds push useful instead of wild, dipping one to help the bow slide through a turn, feathering both to calm a roll. The oarmaster becomes a ropeman, easing and taking in as chafe whispers at the lines. It feels like a team switching from sprint to glide. In a moment, we will meet the person who feeds this wooden animal, because without care the day will end too soon. The ship's carpenter is a quiet hero. He carries a pot of pitch, a pouch of fiber, a bundle of wedges, and a small kit of adze and awls. His ears are tuned to wrong sounds, a hollow thud, a new creak, a thin hiss like a kettle. If resin loosens in the morning heat, he warms it and works it back into the seam with a patient thumb. If a lash frays, he splices and binds before it fails. Many historians think this care was a daily ritual, not a rare repair. A boat at sea is like a skin. It needs oil and simple kindness. In a moment, we will lower our eyes to the planks underfoot and feel why the shape matters. The hull is shallow so the boat can kiss the beach at day's end. It carries a single plank deep like a backbone and a forest of ribs that hold the curve. The bow lifts a little, not to look proud, but to spare the deck from taking every wave in the face. The stern carries the weight of those steering oars, which are curved to bite water without twisting your wrist. Along the gunwale, small bosses or loops catch ropes in the same place every time, because habit is safety. You do not want to wonder where a line lives when the gust arrives. In a moment, we will place you on a bench and let the day begin in your own hands. You sit with your knees bent and your feet firm, and you wrap calloused fingers where others have wrapped them before. The oarmaster's voice is low and regular. The first strokes are gentle, not because the sea is kind, but because muscles need time to warm. Your oar partner watches you from the corner of his eye. If your blade dips too deep, he tilts a little to balance you. The boat likes even hands. It rewards quiet with speed and punishes noise with drag. In a moment, we will name the small jobs that fill every pause, because there are almost no true pauses. Between rowing sets, someone checks the lashings at the mast foot. Another lifts a leather bucket and dashes fresh water across a line that has begun to squeal. Plant fiber swells with a drink and stops complaining. A boy with good ears walks the deck barefoot, feeling for a soft spot under a plank that might mean a seam is drinking more than it should. The carpenter grunts a yes or a no and moves his pitchpot closer. The captain watches shadows on the distant headland without staring. Everyone is working, but the day stays quiet. In a moment, we will listen for the way command moves across. This small world, orders on a Bronze Age boat are short and old. Hold ease, shipped ho. They travel by voice, by hand signs, by the tilt of the steersman's chin. A stranger would miss most of them. The captain rarely raises his voice, because fear does not mend a rope or calm a sea. He trusts the oarmaster to own the beat, and he trusts the steersman to read the water like a text learned in childhood. Many historians think crews stayed together season after season for this reason. New hands could be taught, but trust takes time. In a moment, we will let a soft modern picture settle in your mind so you can feel this without notes. Think of a small kitchen where a cook, a sous, and a dishwasher have worked together for years. No one bumps anyone, even when the space is the size of a bed. A pan slides out as a hand reaches in. A towel appears before anyone asks. This boat is that kitchen. Only the heat is sun, and the pan is a sail. The same grace keeps things from spilling. It is not heroics. It is the habit of many mornings. In a moment, we will let the wind freshen and watch the steersman and oarmaster change the ship's mood with 3 quiet moves. The steersman dips the starboard or to lift the bow a finger's breadth into the wind. The oarmaster eases the sheet one hand width. No moran that's slack lets the sail settle with fewer wrinkles. The captain nods at the small but welcome gain. You feel it as a lessening of the shudder at your hands, a smoother flow along the blade. The boat is happy. When a craft is happy, it forgives small mistakes. When it is unhappy, it punishes them fast. In a moment, we will return to the question we planted at the start, how a day truly feels in the Bodiand. Admit that even this gentle hour has a cost. Salt begins to dry on your skin like a second shirt. Your palms warm from use. Your thighs find the wood is not as soft as you wished. The sun is still low, and already someone pulls a thin cloth over his head and neck to slow the burn. The oarmaster changes the chant to a longer line, signaling an easy set that saves breath for later. You learn that strength is not loud here. It is quiet and regular. In a moment, we will glance forward along the deck where bundles and jars ride in their places, because even the weight you carry is planned to keep the boat in balance. Cargo lies low and centered, wrapped in woven mats and tied to cleats so nothing leaps when the boat does. Water jars are wedged where they will not roll. Spare oars are lashed along the thwarts. The pitch pot sits in shade like a small altar. A stone anchor sleeps near the bow with its braided rope coiled clear. Everything is where a sleepy hand can find it at night. A tidy boat is like a tidy story. You do not trip over surprises. In a moment, a gull will call, a headland will tilt, and the captain will look toward a cove. That means breakfast and a fresh jar of water, but not yet. First light is for distance. The crew keeps its pace as the sea darkens from pewter to blue. The sail fills more honestly. The steersman tastes the new breeze and tests it with the faintest pressure on his left oar. The oarmaster shortens the line again, tightening the crew into something close to silence, where only wood and water speak. This is the hour you remember at dusk, when your hands are tired and your shirt is stiff with salt, a beginning that felt like a promise. In a moment, we will step ashore with soft feet and talk about food and water, because a boat runs on those as much as on wind and will. And one mistake with a jar can end the day you thought you could handle. Let the cove glow pale as the boat noses in. The anchor stone kisses the sand, and the crew moves with the same quiet rhythm as at sea. Only now their eyes slide toward the bundles that mean food and drink. A day in a Bronze Age ship does not begin with a feast. It begins with a count. The oarmaster, or another trusted hand, squats by the water jars and skins, lifts each one, weighs it on his palm, and nods or frowns. The sound you hear is not hunger, but planning. In a moment, we will open one of those jars and taste the morning the way the crew did. The jar is clay, fat-bellied, and sealed with a stopper of fiber and wax. Sometimes resin brushed around the rim to keep the sea out and the flavor in. Inside is water that came from a spring yesterday or the day before, already learning to taste of clay and of the jar's last cargo. If the last cargo was wine, the water has a strange kindness. If it was oil, the first mouthful feels slick, until your tongue forgets. The ration is small, a shared cup passed hand to hand, never to thirst but never to full either. You drink because you will row, and rowing is a kind of burning. In a moment, we will add a second taste that made water safer and made men steadier. Wine is not a party on this boat. It is a tool. It is drawn thin, cut with water 3 parts, or 4, enough to soften the stale edge and to make the mix less friendly to the little things that turn your stomach bad. Beer exists too, especially when Egypt is near. A barley drink, cloudy and gentle, but wine holds the usual place out here. Nobody drinks straight. The day is too long, and the sea too watchful. For that, think of a modern camping trip where you tip a little juice into your bottle so it tastes like something. Now add the rule that one bottle must last you until dusk. In a moment, we will open the food bundles that look so small against a whole day. Bread leads the list, and it is not soft. It is barley pressed into flat cakes, or rusks dried hard, so they do not mold in heat. You soak it in the diluted wine or in water to wake it, then chew until your jaw agrees to the plan. Olives come next, kept in brine, each one a small, sharp rest for the mouth. Dried fish appears in strips that yield to your teeth with salt and sun still clinging. Sometimes it is pounded into a paste with herbs, if someone had time on the last beach to make it kind. Dates or figs, when trade was good or when the coast was generous, add sweetness to the morning so the next pull on the oar feels less like work and more like a rhythm. In a moment, we will talk about what does not happen on board, because leaving fire on land is part of why the boat stays a boat. The crew almost never cooks at sea. A spark plus rope plus wind is a bad sum, and a clay brazier on a deck that moves is a joke the sea tells before it takes your sail. So the rule is simple: cold on the water, hot on the sand. At dusk, when they beach the hull, they heap stones into a low ring, set a pot, and turn grim stores into something that smells of home. Barley becomes a porridge thick, salted, maybe softened with oil. Dried fish melts into it like a promise. Greens from a nearby bank, if luck smiles, make a bright edge. The day teaches patience. You imagine the pot while you row. In a moment, we will return to the cursed friend of every voyage: bad water, and see how a small mistake can bend a whole day. Water goes wrong faster than a storm. Many sailors would tell you if we had their words. A jar left open to sun grows, tired and warm. A skin stored against pitch or oil will borrow that smell. A stopper not set tight will trade with the sea's breath and sour the taste. The crew knows to shade the jars, to wrap a wet cloth around a skin and let the breeze cool it by stealing a little water to the air, to rotate which vessels are opened so none stand half full for long. If a beach spring looks lively, they fill their if it looks dull, they carry on to the next inlet. You cannot drink the sea. You cannot argue with thirst, so you learn the patience of a desert traveler with waves for dunes. In a moment, we will watch the small ways a body is kept whole when salt and sun steal from it all day. Skin burns, lips crack, and hands turn to stone if you do not listen. The crew rubs oil into arms and faces, a thin sheen that takes the glare down and keeps salt from biting until rinse time. They tuck cloth under headbands to cover necks, damp at first light, dry by noon, wet again if the breeze is keen. A newcomer, who gulps his ration and hopes for more, meets the old rule: small sips. Many rests because the stomach is a jealous jar and will spill if you rush it. Seasickness visits new legs early. The old hands steady them, look at the line of shore, breathe with the oars, taste a date, and wait. In a moment, we will step to the quarter where the oarmaster keeps his little hoard and see what else a day carries. The oarmaster minds a basket with crumbs of everything salt, a twist of dried herbs, a fig saved for the man who is flagging, a cup that is everyone's measure so no one steals by accident. He is not a scold. He is a rhythm of oars and of food. If someone falters, he adjusts the stroke to hide it and passes the fig without words. If someone wastes, he notices and delays their next turn. Discipline here is not a lash. It is a quiet ledger kept in his head, because a strong morning that ruins an afternoon is bad math. In a moment, we will follow the boat ashore again, because most of the day is not spent at feast. But the day depends on the shore's brief gifts. Beaching at dusk is as much about water as sleep. A cove with a trickle from rock is worth more than a shout of welcome from a busy quay. If your jars are low, 2 men go with cups and eyes. One tastes, one watches for silt and for animals that might have fouled the pool. If it is good, others roll the jars near and fill them with a patience born of fear and practice. Someone skims a handful from the spring to splash on the hull's tired seams. Water in the right place fixes more than thirst. Fire follows, a small one, and the porridge pot begins its endless cure. Barley, pinch of salt, strip of fish, handful of greens, a trickle of oil. In a moment, we will listen to the talk that rises with steam, because food is also a story. The crew does not debate heroes. They swap small recipes and place names. One says the olives are better to headlands east in a cove where the trees lean, like old men. Another says the water at last week's spring ran sweeter at dawn. The captain says little and chews slowly. The steersman warms his hands on the pot and closes his eyes with a tired man's pleasure. Food at night is a kind of treaty. You worked, we worked. The sea scowled and then relented. Tomorrow we'll ask again. You take a second ladle, only if the oarmaster nods, and he nods, only if the jars near your bed are full enough for morning. In a moment, we will watch a rare gift fall from the sky, and how the crew catches it. Rain is a festival when it comes soft and straight. The sail goes up at the beach, but not to go. It goes up to become a roof. Ropes stretch it into a slope, and clay cups and jars wait at the low edge for the world's own ration to gather and fall. Some crews keep a clean cloth only for this work, linen that has not tasted fish or oil, so the rain keeps its sky flavor. The first cups go to the sick or the newest hands, because the old know the taste of wish and can wait. Then the jars drink. The crew sleeps deeper on such nights because the morning will be easier. In a moment, we will return to the boat's spine and notice how food and water tie themselves to wood and pitch. Even the stoppers smell of resin here. The same pitch that keeps water out of seams keeps water in jars when it is brushed along a rim and pressed with a fiber plug. The same light twine that lashes a yard binds a bundle of bread to stay dry. The carpenter's hand and the cook's hand are cousins. They both seal, both portion, both protect against a day's ruin. If a jar cracks, there is a trick with a wrap of wet leather and a band of cord that will hold until the next market sells a new one. A boat and a pantry share one lesson. Nothing lasts if you do not tend it. In a moment, we will peek into a palace storehouse and a low market stall, because what the crew eats comes from someone's counting elsewhere, in a larger harbor. Scribes sit by stacks of jars and ties of fiber stamped with marks that mean a year, a place, a temple, a man. A crew buys food with goods or with promises, and the clerk writes without looking up, used to men who smell of rope and sun. In a smaller cove, a woman sells flat cakes from a basket and smiles at the way rowers chew like dogs fast at first, then careful once their bellies remember warmth. These exchanges teach the crew what the coast can spare and how far they can push tomorrow's ration. Every bite is also a measure of the next day's reach. In a moment, we will close our mouths and feel the weight return to our hands, because the sea is waiting and the drum will start again. You can see how simple food and careful drink keep the hull moving as surely as oars and sail. Nothing here is fancy. Everything here is exact. The myth of a ship fed on glory melts in a bowl of barley, and in a cup of common wine made safe by water. The day does not forgive a careless swallow or a lost stopper. The crew survives on small rules kept without fuss, and that quiet is what a newcomer finds hardest. Tomorrow's jars must be as full as today's pride. In a moment, we will turn from mouths to wood and rope, because even the best ration fails if a seam opens, and the next stretch of our night belongs to the tools, and the upkeep that let a floating house keep its promise to stay afloat. Let the tools come out of their hiding places as the light strengthens. They are not dramatic things, just small answers to the sea's constant questions. A pot of pitch warmed by coals, a bundle of plant fiber that looks like a bird's nest, and adze that fits one hand as if it were made for that palm alone. The carpenter moves among them like a gardener, checking what needs water and what needs pruning. We called the boat a wooden animal earlier. This is its grooming. In a moment, you will feel how each simple act keeps the day from breaking in the middle. First comes the seams. The hull is a skin made of planks, held together by clever joint strongs and grooves, pegs and slots, and, in some traditions, by lashings that let the wood flex. Many historians think our Bronze Age boat along this coast used peg joints most of all, but even stiff joints need soft help where the sea licks and tests. The carpenter warms pine resin until it turns glossy and docile, then kneads shredded fiber into it with slow thumbs. The mix goes into every hairline like balm. He is listening with his fingers. A seam that drinks the pitch a little too gladly may be the one that wanted to open its mouth wider. In a moment, we will follow him to the waterline, where the sea leaves messages on the wood. A thin beard of weed and shell crust forms under every boat that keeps moving. It looks harmless, a green scarf and a chalky fringe, but it steals speed and invites trouble. The crew beaches the boat a little higher than usual, wedges the hull steady, and then goes to work with scrapers and handfuls of gritty sand. Some hold woven pads, some hold blades beaten flat and smooth, some hold nothing but patience. They scrape until the wood shines, and the water can kiss it clean again. It is like combing a child's hair after a beach day, gentle, thorough, no tugging. That leaves tears. In a moment, we will look at a place that rarely sees daylight, but needs attention whenever sand lets you reach it, where the keel plank meets the rest. There is a long line that takes the ship's weight when beaching. If it wears too thin, the next landing will bite deeper than you like. The carpenter lays along it, rubbing resin into small bruises, tapping in wedges where a plank's edge hints at wanting space, whispering the few hard words he keeps for stubborn wood. A helper sets a narrow stripper rubbing piece where stones like to nip. It is work slowed by kneeling, and nobody envies the knees that learn this art first. Yet an extra finger's thickness here can save a broken breath later when you ground. A touch off center. Soon we will lift our eyes to the mast and the cloth, because wind has its own appetite and eats linen faster than you think. The sail comes down to be read like a letter from last week. Flax cloth is strong but honest. It shows where wind worried it by making faint shiny paths across threads, where a ring chafed, where a fold held damped too long and softened. The sailmistress, sometimes a man, sometimes the steersman's clever partner, sets a patch with needle and palm guard, turning fray back into firmness. She reinforces corners with extra cloth, checks the stitching on the head where the yard bears the load, and adds a soft leather at places where a line loves to rub. A patched sail is not a shame. It is a badge that says we noticed in time. In a moment, we will step to the lines themselves, because rope is both muscle and nerve. Rope in this age is plant-made clever. Flax, palm fiber, rushes, or whatever. The coast grows twists into cord, and then into line with a twist that wants to untwist if you do not ask it kindly. The oarmaster inspects the standing lines that hold mast and yard, feeling for hard spots where salt has made them stiff, and for thin places where fibers are tired. He unlays a short length where a chafe has begun, teases the strands smooth, and splices in new life, tucking each end so neatly that the rope seems healed rather than replaced. The men who row watch with a respect that borders on love. A good splice is quiet insurance. In a moment, we will pick up a leather bucket and deal with the water inside the boat. Because every hull drinks a little, bailing is a humble rhythm that keeps fear small. A boy with bare feet and good balance scoops from the shallow bilge and tosses the cup over the side in a motion he can do half asleep. If there is more water than usual, nobody panics. They follow the sound to its source. A seam near the bow looks damp on its inside face. The carpenter presses a dollop of warm resin fiber mix into the line and smooths it with a wetted thumb. A few more bail strokes, and the rate steadies. The boat is content again. Think of a kitchen where a pot simmers too hard. You turn the flame a finger's width, and the restless surface calms. Soon we will go forward to the anchor gear, because stopping well is part of going well. The anchor is not iron. It is thought and stone. A pierced rock with a braided rope through it waits near the bow, coiled with care so it will run without knots when thrown. Sometimes there are two smaller stones to share the hold in tricky bottoms. The rope where it rubs on the gunwale shows a faint fuzz, so the carpenter adds a leather chafe guard and rubs it with oil to keep grit from cutting it like a saw. The crew tests the knots without drama. An anchor thrown cleanly and retrieved neatly is the difference between a rest and a wrestling match in a narrow cove. In a moment, we will look at the steering oars, which are half tool, half instrument. The paired steering oars at the stern are shaped to bite without tiring the wrist. Their blades flare gently, and their looms carry a wrap of cord where hands sweat. The steersman checks the pins and loops that hold them and smears a little grease where wood meets wood. He lifts each one, listens to the hinge sound, and settles it back like a musician tuning a harp. If a loom shows a split starting, the carpenter fits a cholera-shaped piece, tied and glued, that keeps the crack from running. Nothing is left. It will probably last. See jokes with the ones who say that, and her jokes are not kind. In a moment, we will return to the oars for the benches, because their care is not only in the water, but also under your hands. Pulling oars where skin meets them. A smooth shaft today is a blister tomorrow if a splinter grows. So each rower runs a bit of fine sand or a smooth shell along his oar, taking off the tiniest burrs, then rubs a whisper of oil where the blade meets the loom. The oarlock's simple throngs or shaped rests get the same attention. A rap of leather quiets a squeak that would otherwise grind on everyone's nerves all day. You can hear the echo of our food lesson here. Small prevention is better than any cure the sea will allow. In a moment, we will talk about how all this care fits into time, because maintenance must not eat the day it protects. The crew folds these tasks between rowing sets and before breakfast. At beachings and in dusk's long shadows, nothing waits until it breaks if it can be mended, when it only mutters. The oarmaster knows who is quick with rope, who has light hands with sailcloth, who hears the difference between a healthy creak and a tired groan. He places people like chess pieces only he can see, so that the minute the drum asks for quiet instead of pull, hands find work that keeps tomorrow from arriving with a limp. Many historians think this habit repair woven into routine was the real secret that turned fragile wood into a season-long road. In a moment, we will follow one repair all the way through, so you can feel how many small minds it uses. A seam near the stern has begun to weep more than a thumb's worth. The carpenter nods. The oarmaster shortens a set, and the steersman keeps the stern to the small chop, so the place stays as dry as possible. The boy bails to keep the pool from soaking the wood surrounding the floor. The carpenter melts resin, kneads fiber, and presses the mix in, then binds a thin strip of linen over it as a bandage until the pitch cools. When the boat beaches, he will add a small wedge under the rib that meets that plank, tightening the pattern. Nobody claps. Nobody sighs. They bake their porridge and sleep easier, because wood that feels attended does not sulk at midnight. In a moment, we will tilt our heads toward the sky, because even maintenance needs a forecast. That weather is the foreman you never see. If clouds smear like wool pulled too thin, the crew knows the air is changing. The sail comes down and is rolled, a touch looser so damp will not make a surprise. Lines are coiled on pegs that drain instead of on flat deck, where they drink a puddle all night. The anchor rope is checked again, because a gust at 2 in the morning loves a sloppy knot. Experience is a bronze mirror here, cloudy unless you polish it every day with memory. A storm tomorrow is easier if the sail patch happened today. In a moment, we will let a soft modern picture help you keep this whole dance in your head. Think of a bicycle you ride to work. If you wipe grit from the chain and add a drop of oil when it whispers. If you top the tires before they sag, the ride is smooth and the hill kind. If you ignore it for a week, the same hill feels steeper, and the chain sulks and snaps where you least wish it. The boat is that bicycle multiplied by the sea's mood. Its chain is rope. Its tires are planks, its brakes are the anchor stones, and its frame is joints that will forgive almost anything, except neglect. In a moment, we will step back and listen to the whole crew breathing with their tools, because the line between upkeep and work rhythm is thin on purpose. By now, the patches are cooling, the ropes are coiled true, the oars feel like hands instead of sticks, and the hull is clean enough to pretend it is young. The oarmaster looks to the captain. The steersman taps his oar and smiles at the tone, and the drum returns like a heart returning after a pause. Maintenance has not stolen the morning. It has made the morning worth rowing. The boat will move, on a whisper of wind and a small, steady pull, because 90 minutes ago the carpenter soothed the seam and the sailmistress taught linen to behave. Soon we will shift from tools to bodies, from pots of pitch to the chant that saves breath, and we will find out how a day's labor was divided into sets and glides, so that muscles lasted as long as wood. Let the drum return like a friendly heartbeat. The resin has cooled, the ropes lie in good coils, and the sun has stepped a little higher. This is the hour when rhythm becomes law. The oarmaster lifts his stick and gives 3 soft taps, not to command, but to remind the crew that breath and wood must share one pace. You can feel the boat listen. A Bronze Age ship is too small for waste and too honest for show. It rewards people who work like they mean to last all day. In a moment, the first stroke will slide in, and the water will answer. Rowing sets are not sprints. They are small poems repeated until arms forget words and just speak the beat. The oarmaster hums a line that fits the length of the deck. Catch, pull, feather glide. Each part has the size of a breath. A good crew learns to pull smooth, not hard, because the sea hates jerks. If one blade slaps, the next blade must fix it. If one oar digs too deep, the boat yaws and the steersman scolds the water with his oar to spare the course. Many historians think this is why chance mattered more than muscles. A voice holds you in the middle of the stroke so you do not rush the catch or steal from the glide. In a moment, we will feel how the crew bends time into sets and rests. They pull for a count of 100, rest for 20 strokes with lighter hands, then pull again. The count shifts with wind and cargo, with the captain's finger pointing at a headland. That means shelter or trade. No one shouts numbers. The oarmaster's tune tells the math. He lengthens a note to ask for grace. When a swell runs under the keel, he shortens a note when the boat feels heavy and needs a firmer catch to climb out of its own shadow. It is as gentle as walking a child across a stream on stones. In a moment, the wind will freshen, and the crew will switch to sail without spilling the music. When the wind comes honest, it does not announce itself with a drama. The steersman smells it first. The sailmistress sees a cat's paw on the water. The captain tilts his head. Then hands move or shipped on one side. The yard eased down and then up. The square of flax unrolled so it hangs ready. The oarmaster shaves the chant to a thin thread and turns it into short signals instead of full lines. The crew keeps rowing on the lee side a little longer, helping the boat lean into the new push. There is no grand stop and start, only a slide from muscle to cloth, as if a second pair of lungs had joined the pulling. In a moment, we will stand with the steersman. because his quiet corrections keep this glide from becoming a stumble. The steersman uses his paired oars like fingers on a musical instrument. He dips one to trim the bow, a whisper into the wind. He feathers both to calm a fuss at the stern. He lets them trail to feel how the sea is building under the hull. When a novice rows too deep and tugs the boat sideways, the steersman does not scold with words. He lays a touch on the water that erases the mistake before it grows. In a small crew, one sloppy stroke is louder than any song. The fix is not force but timing. A wide pull when everyone else is narrow bruises the boat's skin. The cure is to match the shape of the pull to the breath of the chant. In a moment, we will return to the benches and show how technique saves bodies. A clean stroke begins with stillness. Hands hold the loom quiet. The blade enters with the face it loves, and you sit the boat rather than wrestle it. Legs give the first push, back carries the middle, arms finish the last hand's width. Feathering is a small gift to your own shoulders. You turn the blade flat to the air as it leaves the water so it slides forward without lifting spray. Spray looks brave in carvings. In life it is just salt in your eyes and drag against the boat. A good crew looks boring from shore. That is a compliment. In a moment, the oarmaster will borrow a trick from yesterday's storms and teach endurance with a tune that hides its medicine. He changes the chant to a collar dancer with a longer tail. The extra notes make the release lazy in a way that saves breath, and the men follow without thinking why. On a hard day, he divides the crew into two voices, so people rest their lungs while their arms keep polite company with the water. The drum is a teacher too. Its skin keeps time when wind eats words. A single soft beat before the catch is like a lighthouse, steady, small, always there. Many historians think these tools were born from experience shared without writing. A tune is memory you can hum when your hands are busy. In a moment, we will feel how fatigue tries to steal the beat, and how the crew protects it. Tired hands make greedy strokes. They reach too far, bend the wrists, and pull with anger instead of weight. The oarmaster watches for that flinch and shortens the set by a finger's width, bringing the boat back into its strong shape. He may pass a fig or adjust a seat block with a small shove of his foot so a man sits straighter. The steersman contributes, a quiet miracle, by choosing a line of water that helps the hull slide instead of slap. Because even the sea has lanes if you look long enough. Technique is mercy, especially late in the day. It makes the same distance feel 2 cups lighter on the arms. In a moment, the wind will falter, and the crew will put the sail to bed without breaking the spell. Taking a sail down well is as delicate as putting a child to sleep. Hands catch the yard. The cloth is bundled, not crushed. The lines are flaked, so no twist waits to betray you later. The oarmaster lengthens the chant back to the rowing version and brings the boat to its first set, as if the day had only just begun. The shift from cloth to muscle is quiet because pride is quiet out here. Strong crews do not show off. They arrive. In a moment, we will let the captain point to a headland and listen to how a pace is chosen for a promise you cannot yet see. A headland looks near over clear water. It is a liar. Distance on the sea comes with no yardstick until you learn the trick of watching how fast a rock creeps past another rock. The captain has that trick. He knows the boat's gait. With this load, this wind, these bodies, he tells the oarmaster a number without saying a number, and the crew settles into the set that will put them under the headland before the afternoon breeze turns contrary. On another day he might ask for a short, firm push to catch a current that runs like a river within the sea. Rowing is not only muscle, it is the art of being in the right water at the right moment. In a moment, we will recall a promise from our first minutes together, how the crew saves breath with songs, while saving time with small math. Songs carry maps inside them. The oarmaster's tune for a long pull names the order of places you will never see from land: the cove with the crooked pine, the beach where fresh water tastes of iron, the reef that only shows a tooth on very low tides. A line tucked into the chorus hints at how the wind turns here afternoon. The crew repeats the song because it is pretty. Really, they repeat it because it is a string of warnings and aids that do not need paper. You learn it by living it. In a moment, the sun will climb high enough to change the angle of light, and the steersman will make one of his small, important choices. Light on the water can hide or reveal. When the sun peers over your shoulder, a shallow patch tells the truth because its color turns a sly green. When it sits in your eyes, the same patch lies like a mirror. The steersman angles the course a few degrees, so the glare becomes a friend and the ripples show their grain. The crew feels the turn in their hips and adjusts the depth of their catch to keep the hull true. Nobody names the trick, they just own it together. In a moment, we will step aside for a short rest on the oars. A slide that keeps the boat's head while giving hands a breath. Rest on the oars is not stopping. It is less weight, more glide, a sigh that still respects the drum. The oarmaster loosens the chant into a hum and lifts it again before laziness can settle. A clever crew makes even rest part of forward motion. This is how they last all day without turning dull or angry. Think of a long walk where you shorten your stride for a hill instead of halting to lean on a stick. The difference in miles is small, the difference in mood is large. In a moment, we will watch a small mistake and its cure, because truth belongs to both. A new hand crowds the catch and splashes, startled by his own noise. His neighbor, a man with careful eyes, shortens his next pull so the oars do not clash. The oarmaster sings a single word, a shade earlier than usual, and the new hand finds himself back in the groove before shame has time to grow. The only lesson given is the beat itself. A boat does not have room for long explanations when the sea is listening. In a moment, the wind will back again just enough for the sail to help, and the crew will move together as if they had one thought between them. Sail and oar share the work when the captain allows it. The square of flax takes the soft part of the load, and the rowers take the stubborn part. The steersman trims with his paired oars, so the push and the pull do not argue. If you could stand above and watch, you would see a small wooden thing sliding along its own shadow with hardly a splash. Down on the bench, you feel it as a boat that suddenly asks less and gives more. That feeling is why sailors keep their trade, even when land is easier. It is not glory, it is grace. In a moment, the headland will draw near enough for choices about where to rest and where to turn, and the rhythm we have built will pass the baton to another craft entirely. You can hear how the day teaches patience and timing more than brute will. The drum holds the center, the chant paints the edges, the steersman writes in small strokes on the water, and the captain reads a far script on stone and cloud. A newcomer could row for an hour with pride. To row from dawn to dusk takes the kindness of these habits. We have stayed close to the body's work because it is honest and simple, but the sea demands another skill before it lets you go far. In a moment, we will lift our faces to the coastline and the sky and learn how crews moved without compass or clock, hugging land when they could, trusting stars when they must, and turning chant into a map that never fades. Lift your eyes from the oar and let the coast become the page you read. The rhythm we built with breath keeps the boat steady, but it is the shore that tells you where that steady should go. A Bronze Age crew learned a coastline the way a child learns a lullaby, one line, then another, until the whole song lives under the tongue. Headlands grow familiar, a crooked pine becomes a friend. A white scar on a cliff says you are halfway to fresh water. Nothing is hurried. You collect these small marks day after day, until even in haze your hands turn the oar a finger's width at the right time. In a moment, we will step closer to the rocks and watch how daytime finding works without a single tool that clicks or glows. Coasting is kindness. You keep the land on one side when you can, far enough to avoid teeth, close enough to see the tooth marks in the rock that warn of hidden shoals. Color helps. Green water over sand, darker blue over safe depth, a sly brown-green over weed that can tangle an anchor rope. Sound helps too. Surf around a headland speaks a rougher tongue than the sigh along a long beach. The steersman listens with his skin as much as his ears, feeling how the swell changes when a point begins to shelter you, or when a reef throws back a confused chop. Many historians think crews also used a simple cord with a small stone to taste depth. The weight told the hand whether the bottom was sand, mud, or shell, each texture a hint about holding ground in hidden bars. In a moment, we will watch the coast itself become a compass, made of pairs and lines. Landmarks are not only single shapes, they are pairs that line up. A notch in the hills behind a spit sits just so when you have cleared a shoal. A temple roof, and a lone cypress form a gate you aim for to slip into a cove. Move a little left or right, and the pair opens or closes, telling you where the channel hides without a spoken word. These backsites are quiet geometry, nothing written, all remembered. A crew that returns year after year collects them like shells, and the oarmaster tucks them into songs you can hum while your hands are busy. In a moment, we will ease away from land a little, because sometimes there is a blue gap to cross, and no landmark to love. Short leaps across open water happen when islands sit like stepping stones. You leave at dawn, when wind is soft, and the sun gives your eyes a friend rather than a glare. The captain chooses a bearing the crew can feel. Keep the sunrise just off the left shoulder, keep the swell slightly on the right hip. You count time by sets of strokes, and by small meals, not by clocks. If you left with the morning land breeze, you expect the sea breeze to rise and point you home by midday. If a bird rises ahead, turns gulls, shearwaters, you take heart. They do not wander far from land when feeding young. Many historians think these short blue runs were measured not in miles but in habits. How many songs to the first drink? How many sets before the horizon begins to show a different color? In a moment, we will wait for night, when the sea becomes a map of lights. Stars are not dots here, they are paths. Crews learned where groups rose and set along their coasts, not to draw straight lines across an empty sea, but to keep a curve. True, when the shore fell away, the Bear wheeled low and slow around the northern sky, and keeping its broad back at the same height over the stern, told you were not wandering too far left or right. Southward, bright rivers of stars rising clusters you might know as the Pleiades and later Orion in other seasons gave timing and direction like familiar bells. It is likely that in this century the exact North Star was not the one we use today, but a cluster of near-northern lights still served as a steady neighborhood. You did not need a pin. You needed a region that behaved. In a moment, we will add wind to this picture, because the air itself tells where you are going. Wrong. Wind has accents. In summer along these coasts, a steady northerly can blow for days, a gift if you ride with it, a wall if you fight it. By afternoon, sea air presses inland. By night, cool land air slides back to the water. The steersman feels the switch on, his cheek before the sail shows it, and the captain chooses whether to hide behind a point or to lean out and catch the new push. Over time, your skin learns a wind, the way your ear learns a friend's footstep on a stair. If the breeze smells of resin and goats, land is ahead, even if you do not see it. If it smells dull and clean, you are farther out than you wished. In a moment, we will bend low again and let the sea's body speak through your own, because swells carry memory that outlives wind. Even when the breeze forgets, the sea remembers. Long swells run from storms you never saw, and they keep a direction like a story told too many times to change. A set of swells from two angles makes a crosshatch. Pilots learn which set belongs to the open sea, and which belongs to the channel between islands. By holding the boat to sit with one and cross the other at the same angle, you keep a bearing you could not name, but could feel in your hips. This is a kind of compass without numbers. If the pattern shifts and your ribs feel a new tug, you have crossed a line of water you did not see, perhaps a current edge, perhaps the mouth of a river sending a faint brown-green out to sea. In a moment, we will climb above again, not in a dream but in memory, and look down at how all these signals braid into a day's course. Navigation is a basket, not a single handle. The crew balances sun angle with wind taste, landmark pairs with swell feel, the wheeling of stars with the gossip of birds. None of it asks you to be a hero. All of it asks you to be patient. The oarmaster's songs hold the order of coves. The steersman's hands remember last season's hard day and avoid it. The captain carries an older picture in his head that newer sailors borrowed by standing close when he points. Misunderstandings grow when later readers imagine straight lines and big instruments. Bronze Age finding was more like walking a familiar footpath at dusk than like drawing a ruler across a map. You do not aim, you keep correcting. In a moment, we will sit with a quiet mistake and how crews forgave it. Fog can slide off a headland and blunt every edge. On such a morning, the captain calls for short pulls and long listening. You count the interval between a swell's lift and the slap on stone. You sniff for wet earth. If sound says open and smell says closed, you turn a little outward, until the two voices agree. If you guess wrong, and the keel whispers over weed, too shallow for comfort, you ship the oars and pole gently off with spare blades, never pushing hard enough to break the skin. Nobody speaks blame. The sea is full of near misses. The skill is to make them stay near. In a moment, we will let belief walk in on soft feet, because ritual and habit often stood guard over this quiet art. Before a leap, or after a safe landfall, someone pours a drop of wine over the bow, and thanks whatever name the crew uses for the mind of the water. It is not a loud act. It is a small reset, a charm tied at the mast, a knot in a cord meant to be untied after a hard passage. A first step on shore taken with the right foot. These things give shape to luck, so people can feel they are doing their part. Many historians think such gestures did not replace skill. They steadied hands when skill had done all it could. In a moment, we will tip back toward day-to-day again, because most finding is neither heroic nor mystical. It is the habit of never letting all your clues point the same way before you choose. Asterisk. A crew that lasts does not trust only the eye. They ask the sea for two signs before they act: color and sound, wind and swell, bird and smell. They do not owe this to superstition. They owe it to long practice of being wrong without paying the highest price. Think of a walker who checks both the feel underfoot and the look of the path ahead before stepping on damp stones. Everyone falls once. Fewer fall twice who keep this rule. The oarmaster builds the rule into his songs. The steersman builds it into his hands. The captain builds it into the day's plan. In a moment, we will draw a small circle back to the beginning, because the rhythm on the benches keeps all this thinking from turning to worry. When the chant holds the stroke, minds are free to notice the world. A crew that rows in fits and starts does not see birds, does not hear surf, does not smell resin. A crew that rows like breathing can afford to notice and to change. This is why navigation and rhythm are twins. One keeps the boat steady in itself. The other keeps it steady in the world. The rest is detail you add as seasons turn. A new sandbar here, a fresh-cut terrace there, a shrine painted brighter after a rich year. The song gains a line, the boat gains a path. In a moment, we will let season and weather take the tiller, because they sit above all plans and decide which lanes open and which must wait. And the next part of our night belongs to their quiet rules. Let the coast fall back to its steady place at the edge of your eye. We have been reading rocks and stars. Now we listen to the air itself. Season sits above every plan on this kind of water. A Bronze Age crew did not fight the calendar. They sailed inside it. Spring opens roots like windows. Summer holds them wide with long light and dependable winds. Autumn begins to close the shutters. Winter draws the bolt. You feel this rhythm in your shoulders as much as in the sail. In a moment, we will let summer speak first, because it is the teacher that talks most days. In summer, the north breathes steadily for weeks at a time along much of this sea. It is not a storm wind. It is a long push, cool and dry, that runs the length of the day and rests at night. Crews plan with it the way farmers plan with rain. If you ride it south, you make easy miles. If you face it, you start early. You hug the coast, and you learn patience. The afternoon sea breeze joins the plan, pressing from open water toward shore. And then, after dusk, the land sends a soft wind back out. This daily swing is the boat's clock. In a moment, we will let spring and autumn step in, because the windows do not stay open without edges. Spring is hopeful and tricky. Days lengthen, but storms can still visit with sharp rain and late cold. A captain watches the color of distant hills and the way cloud shadows smear across them. If the air is too clean after days of haze, it can mean a sweep of wind is coming. Autumn is gentle at first, and then sudden. Warm water meets cooler air. Mists creep up from river mouths. Gusts tumble off high ground at odd hours. A crew turns cautious again, making shorter runs between known coves, because a winter mood can drop inside a single afternoon. In a moment, we will speak the word most sailors avoid and all obey. Winter closes lanes, the sun sits low, the sea keeps its cold shoulders, and the sky makes quick decisions that a small boat cannot answer. Many historians think most coastal trade rested in this season, or kept to the most sheltered inside routes, with holes pulled up on beach timbers and turned into houses that smell of pitch and stew instead of salt and sun. Maintenance grows thick in these months, seams redone, sails patched, lines retwisted. A good winter makes a safe summer. A bad winter leaves a boat hungry before it moves. In a moment, we will come nearer to the daily reading of the sky, because, even in good months, the air keeps a book only patient eyes can read. Clouds speak in simple words if you listen often. Thin feathers, high and wispy, far above birds, can whisper of change coming from far away. Low stacks over warm land mean rising air. Later, falling air may run back toward the sea in evening gusts. A halo around the sun or moon is a quiet ring, made by tiny ice far above. It sometimes walks in front of weather that follows from the west in a day or two. On this coast, a brown smudge over the south can be dust, and dust means southern wind. Southern wind can mean heavy air and a short, steep chop that tires oars. A steersman learns to name these hints without words, darkening or brightening with them like a mirror. In a moment, we will look at the water's face, because the sea writes the sky's diary by noon. Water tells on wind before it arrives. Little cat's paws scud across a patch when a breeze fans it. Ripples tighten into small combs that aim themselves and say soon. When two sets cross, you can almost see their argument written in tiny diamonds. The steersman sets the bow to lean with one and step across the other, so the hull does not trip. Where a river enters, a brown slick might lie like oil. If wind blows against that current, the chop grows mean and small and wastes energy. A captain will skirt such places the way a walker skirts loose gravel on a slope. In a moment, we will add sound and smell, the oldest tools, because eyes grow tired and noses do not. Smell carries distance here. Resin, goats, and time mean land upwind, cold, clean. Almost nothing means open water. Fish, rot, or seaweed smell can mean a tide line where floating things collect, and a tide line can carry drift that catches a rudder if you are careless. Sound carries shape. The hiss of even swell on sand is wide and even. The boom and rattle of stones rolled by surf says, "Keep off." In fog, crews count the beat between a swell lifting the hull and the slap it makes on cliff. Primitive range that tells whether the world is opening or closing around you. In a moment, we will bring the calendar back down to decks, because season is not poetry to these people. It is a schedule that saves skin. There was a sailing season, as real as harvest season on land. It stretched from spring through early autumn, tighter or wider depending on local mood. Within it, the crew kept a weekly rhythm. Start at first, light, make a modest distance by midday. Look for a safe beach or a known quay by late afternoon, before the contrary evening winds could fuss. Long open runs waited for the most predictable mornings. Delicate beach landings avoided days when swell ran heavy from a distant storm you could not see. The plan had no dates on paper. It lived in backs and in the oarmaster's set list. In a moment, we will visit why this plan wins against impulse. A small boat cannot conquer hurry. It survives by keeping no single part of itself angry, neither the wood, nor the rope, nor the lungs, nor the sky. If you force a late-day run against an unhelpful wind, you come ashore in the dark with sand in your teeth and a crease torn in your sail. If you choose pride over patience when clouds lay down a faint gray roof, you earn a bent mast and a story that gets told too often. The crew avoids these taxations by treating season like law and weather like advice from an old friend. They nod, they adjust, they try tomorrow instead. In a moment, we will put a little modern picture next to this, so you can hold it without charts. Imagine a mountain bus route that only runs in the dry months. The road exists in the wet. It simply eats buses that pretend not to notice mud. A wise driver knows when the afternoon fog makes corners into guesses and takes the next lay-by without shame. The sea is that road, and the captain is that driver. Reading surface and sky for the moment when a full day becomes a bad choice. You are safer for his caution than for any bravery you think you brought. In a moment, we will come close again to the crew's bodies, because weather writes on skin the way it writes on water. Sun learns every inch of you in summer. The crew fights it with oil, thin cloth, shade stolen from the sail at rest, and timing that lets hard pulls happen before noon. Wind steals sweat and leaves salt, which rubs raw where hands and oars meet. Blisters are not medals. They are mistakes paid for in the next hour. A smart oarmaster staggers work, never letting the same shoulders carry all the paces when a headland makes you labor. Heat also begs water, and water is rationed by rules we already tasted. Weather is not backdrop, it is appetite and thirst, and the reason porridge at dusk tastes like mercy. In a moment, we will swing back to cold, because even summer has a shadow. Cold comes from surprise showers, from nights spent too early in the shoulder seasons, from winds that turn north and forget to rest. The crew answers with layers kept dry in jars, with fires built above the tide line, with hands warmed before mending a line that would cut more cruelly if fingers were numb. Sleep is shelter as much as rest, a hole pulled higher and a sail pitched, as a tent can mean health tomorrow instead of a cough that lingers. Many historians think these simple choices no drama, no delayer, why crews returned season after season. In a moment, we will let belief step beside this practicality, because people do not meet weather with tools alone. Ritual gave names to what skill already knew. A libation before a doubtful run, a whispered promise to leave an offering at a shrine. If fair wind holds a taboo against speaking the word for storm while mending a seam, these are not magic tricks, they are frames that hold nerves steady. When a season turns, someone might mark a mast with a scratch and a prayer, a small ledger between crew and sky that says we remember our place. It makes men kinder to each other when the gusts come mean, and kindness is also safety. In a moment, we will look down again at charts you can touch, beaches, ropes, skin, and return to the habit that saved more lives than any charm. The habit is simply this: match your day to the season, match your hour to the wind, and never let hope outrun water and wood. The captain reads the high signs. The steersman listens to the low ones. The oarmaster turns both into a pace humans can keep. We return to the question from the start. Why? You might not last a day on. Give the soft answer again. You could last a day if the crew folded you into their rhythm, and if the weather chose to be ordinary. Lasting a season is different. It asks you to love caution, to feel shifts in your skin, and to let small wisdoms stand in front of your pride. In a moment, we will step off the wind and into the quieter center of the day, how people cared for their bodies and their minds when sun, salt, and habit threatened to wear them thin, and how beaching at dusk turned a working boat into a little village for sleep. Let the day settle into its middle, the light bright but not fierce yet, the wind a gentle hand and not a shove. We have talked about seasons and winds, about how patience is the real captain. Now we come to the quiet craft of staying whole inside that plan. A body on a Bronze Age boat is asked to do simple things for a long time. It pulls, it lifts, it squints, it stands ankle deep, and then dries, and then soaks again. Health here is not a speech. It is a series of small favors you do for your own skin and for your neighbor's nerves. In a moment, we will smooth oil into a forearm and feel how even that has a method. Olive oil is both food and shield. A thin film rubbed on arms, neck, and cheeks keeps salt from biting too deeply and turns sun from a burn into a slow browning. Most men can carry many crews. Wet a cloth, wring it, and tie it over head and neck under a band, letting the morning breeze pull cool from the damp until noon. The oarmaster takes one look at a man's ears and the bridge of his nose and passes the jar without comment, because shame is expensive and oil is cheap. In a moment, we will deal with the enemy that works in silent: salt crystals and how to keep them from sawing skin all afternoon. Salt dries two little knives where oar and hand meet. Old hands know to rinse wrists and palms with a mouthful of fresh water, not a pour, just a wipe that melts the worst of it, then to rub a drop of oil into the hinge of each finger. If blisters come, they are not badges. They are repairs to be made at dusk. A strip of linen or soft leather makes a simple guard, set smooth so it doesn't raise a new seam of trouble. The carpenter's kit and the crew's kit overlap here. Resin that fills a plank seam can seal a flap of skin if mixed with beeswax and laid thin. Many historians think such home salves changed little for centuries because they worked in a moment. We will look down at feet, because deck, beach, and bilge all claim their share. Feet are maps of the day's mercy. Sand hides, splinters, pebble, Strands bruise, wet planks are sly. Men wear simple sandals when they can, and go barefoot when grip matters more than pricked pride. At dusk, someone sits with a pin and a steady eye, hunting a thorn, and someone else warms oil and rubs heels until cracks soften. There is a quiet fairness in this. Today your feet, tomorrow mine. It is likely that a reed mat, or a folded cloak, lives under each man's place at night. Keeping it dry is a mark of sense, because a damp bed is a cough waiting its chance. In a moment, we will climb from feet to eyes, which work harder than anyone admits, until the light leaves. Glare tires, a mind by noon, a strip of cloth tied low across the brow, a brim bent into a cap from a woven mat, or even a smear of soot under the eyes on very bright days. All simple tricks to give the world back its edges. A rinse with clean water when the ration allows, a blink behind a palm shade when the oarmaster calls a light set, a promise to yourself not to stare into a white edge of wave for more than you must. It sounds like little, and it is. Little is the size of everything that keeps a crew human. In a moment we will deal with bellies, because diet on this boat is modest, and modest must still be kind. Food was never fancy. Barley, olives, dried fish, figs, and dates, when fortune smiled, porridge at dusk. But within that plain bowl, crews kept small comforts alive. A wrinkle of herbs saved from a market, a pinch of salt traded for a smile, a drop of sweet wine dripped into a tired man's spoon because the oarmaster noticed his strokes shorten. A full stomach is not the goal, an even stomach is. A man who gulps in the morning pays with a twisting hour at noon. A man who saves 2 bites for the last set grows sweeter when the headland proves farther than it looked. In a moment, we will give the stomach its partner, the throat, which needs care in a world made of salt. Water is rationed by custom, which is to say by love disguised as rule. Small sips often, none big enough to make a man greedy. On hotter days, a mouthful swished and spit melts salt from the tongue so the next sip does more. Some crews carry a skin with a little sour wine and water just for rinsing mouths at midday, a kindness that keeps tempers cool. Seasickness visits new men when the boat dances more than expected. The cure is not words but a steady gaze at land, a date chewed slow, a hand on the shoulder, and the oarmaster's tune lifting the breath back into rhythm. In a moment, we will step onto sand, because a human day needs fire, washing, and sleep. And those live on shore beaching at dusk turns a working hull into a village. Stones are gathered into a ring where waves cannot reach. A pot sits over a small flame, never a showy one. Wood is precious in a world where every tree is a mast in waiting. Clothes come off in order, sweaty shirt first, salt stiff belt next stand, are rubbed with sand at a waterline and then rinsed in a trickle from a spring if a trickle offers itself. You learn to wash the salt from cloth, even if you cannot from hair. Dry linen is warmth, heavy linen is a thief of heat. In a moment, we will place the tent, because a sail can be more than wind's partner. The sail becomes a roof held up by the yard, a triangle or a lean-to depending on wind and stones. It is more shade than shelter, if the night is fine, more wall than roof, if a gust might prowl. Men stake corners with pebbles, woven into fabric pockets, or with loops made for this very purpose. A wet sail dries by midnight and smells like a field after rain. Under it lie red mats or cloaks, heads toward the boat, feet outward, so anyone rising to watch the anchor will not step on a face. Watches are set by common sense. The steersman likes the last hours before dawn when air speaks of change. The oarmaster prefers the first dark when embers need minding. In a moment, we will listen to the pot. Porridge is the boat's forgiveness for the day. Barley, salt, water, a shred of fish, a thread of oil, and any green gathered low on the bank that will not anger a landowner. It thickens, while stories thin the day's edge. Men do not trade boasts. They trade small news: how a seam held, how a boy at the market made change with clean hands, how a gull led them to a shoal of baitfish in the morning. A second ladle goes to the one whose hands show more work than most, and no one needs to say why. If rain chooses kindness, cups line up to catch it off the sail's edge. The first sweet mouthful feels like a temple's gift. In a moment, we will put out a little smoke, because insects talk to and smoke answers them gently. Mosquitoes rise where fresh water stands and evening warms. A coil of damp leaves and a pinch of resin on the coals make a smoke that keeps the biters off faces and ankles. The smell is not all pleasant, sharp, then sweet, then gone, but the relief is real. Ash rubbed light on exposed skin does a similar trick for a while. In marshy coves, men learn to leave the spring to the dark and fill jars at dawn when cool air sits on the pool and the insects sleep. These habits are small and seasonal, but a season is a boat's life, and this is how it is kept. In a moment, we will open the crew's medicine chest, which is mostly hands, patience, and a few herbs learned by heart. For cuts and scrapes there is clean water, pressed linen, resin, warmed with oil, and bandages tied firm but never mean. For a strained wrist there is rest, a wrapped strip of wool, and a change of bench so the angle is kinder tomorrow. For a cough there is hot water breathed under a cloth, and a spoon of honey when trade has been lucky. Many historians think a scrap of knowledge lived with every crew. What leaf eases a sting? What warm compress loosens a knot? What prayer calms a mind that saw a barbed reef in a dream? Nothing grand, nothing cruel. In a moment we will ease the mind more directly, because games and songs are also medicine. Knucklebones click softly on a flat stone, and laughter follows the throws without rising to the gulls. A riddle shared becomes a kind of rope. Each man holds a word and tugs. A chant from rowing hours changes clothes and slips into a lullaby for those who sleep first. The best stories are about markets, not monsters. The fig woman who scolded a prince as if he were her son. The scribe who stamped a chord twice and then blushed. These small entertainments settle muscles and keep pride from swelling in a space too small to house it. In a moment, we will walk the edge where quarrel might start and see how it is turned back with the same quiet tools that mended rope. Quarrels are more tiring than headwinds. A wise captain notices the hard face before the harsh word and asks a man to help with a task just out of earshot. A wise oarmaster lengthens or shortens a set to drain a mood before it overflows. A gift appears at the right moment. A fig saved, a little extra oil for a sore shoulder and the edge dulls. It is not deceit. It is maintenance of the human kind. Resentments are like leaks, fixed when they whisper, costly when they shout. In a moment, we will feel a last round of checks before sleep. Because good sleep is built in the hour before eyes close. The anchor rope is laid over a smooth stone and felt with bare toes to be sure no fiber frays. The hole's wedges are tapped and answer with the same note as at dusk. The embers are spread thin so no spark will climb the sail. Water jars are set within easy arm's reach for the watch. Someone sets his cloak where dawn will touch it first. Dry warmth at waking is a luxury you cannot buy. Then the breathing of men finds one slow rhythm, and the cove holds it like a bowl holds water. A sea that can be loud learns to whisper when a crew earns it. In a moment, we will turn our heads toward purpose again, because no one rows forever for the sake of rowing. And the next morning opens toward cargo and shoreside hands, as much as toward wind. You can see how health on this boat is woven from the same cloth as work. Small acts, often repeated, chosen kindly. Oil on skin, salt rinsed from wrists, sandals set to dry, porridge stirred without hurry. A joke kept soft, a watch kept firm. These do not make a statue in a museum, but they make men last. And lasting, not shining, is the aim. We began this day with rhythm and wood. We kept it with water and habit. Now we will give it a reason you can stack and count. In a moment, we will walk up a beach where jars are mountains, and scribes make marks like little waves. And we will see how copper shaped like oxides, oil that glows like sunshine caught, and cloth that smells of flax all move through hands that know both chant and ledger. Let the next morning arrive with purpose. The same oars, the same chant, the same careful oil on skin. Now add weight, that means a promise. A small ship in this century does not carry armies. It carries jars and bundles, and the slow wealth of households that do not fit into pockets. The crew feels it in the way the hull settles a little deeper, in the way the first set of strokes pulls against more than water. Trade gives shape to the day. Without it, a boat is only exercise. With it, each cove and key invites you to place one thing down and pick another up. In a moment, we will open a bundle and find cloth that smells of flax and sunlight. Textiles ride well because they can be rolled tight and tied light. Flax woven on land becomes brightness at sea. Pale cloth folded into squares and stacked so the bales breathe. A crew ties them away from spray and sets them over the keel so the balance stays true. When a cove market opens, a woman who has watched the boats since dawn will pinch the cloth between finger and thumb and nod if the weave pleases. A bolt might become ritual clothing far from the field where it grew. A roll might turn to sail patches on another coast. Smell meeting smell in a handshake that does not need a language. In a moment, we will turn from softness to shine, because oil in jars is a different kind of light. Olive oil is sunshine caught and saved. It travels in clay with shoulders you can grip, sealed with resin to keep the sea's breath from stealing it. The crew stacks jars in a way that steals no sleep. Heavy low, necks protected, stoppers checked morning and night. When they beach near a village, a buyer walks a hand over the jar's body and tilts it gently to feel the weight shift. Experience is a scale. Oil feeds people, feeds lamps, feeds skin. A palace scribe might weigh it with marks on a cord. A cove buyer might bite a stopper and decide with a smile. Different places, same care. In a moment, we will lift something that asks 2 men to move and 3 to curse softly. Copper rides the sea shaped like the hide of an ox, wide and flared at the edges, so hands can catch it. Each ingot is the color of old honey when new and the color of dusk when the sea has kissed it too long. Many historians think these shapes made stacking easier and counting clearer in palaces that loved neat piles. They are not friendly to backs. The crew pads the deck under them with rush or folded cloth, ties them firm so they do not slide, and prays for small surf at the next landing. Tin, rarer and lighter, sometimes rides beside them in humbler shapes, destined to turn copper into bronze in someone's hearth far away. In a moment, we will set a jar among these weights that smells of a different shore. Wine travels in amphorae, with long necks and pointed toes that fit into racks or into sand. It is young in some places, aged in others, familiar on every tongue. On a good day, a scribe at a palace quay will mark a cord with a stamp and a sign, tying account to jar, jar to man, man to another man who will carry the jar on land. On another day, in a smaller cove, there is only a handshake and a blessing spoken to a local god with a reed crown. The boat moves between these worlds without fuss. The crew speaks enough words to be fair and keeps quiet when silence does better. In a moment, we will tie the ship to a quay that thinks in tall rooms and see how order looks when it wears a seal. A palace harbor is a tidy mouth. Keystones sit square, ramps slope where carts can climb, and men who smell of ink and read pens stand ready to write. They do not shout, they point. A runner brings a list, written on wet clay, or on a scrap, that will not survive more than a season. The captain answers with numbers that live in his head, and nods to the crew to lift this and set those there. Scales show their tongues. Marks land on clay that hardens later into a forgetful history, because most of these small records crumble when walls fall or fires visit. Yet for the day itself, the writing steadies the hands. It says, "We agree." In a moment, we will leave the quay's right angles and sit in a market where shapes are round and bargaining is a kind of game. A cove market wakes when shadow leaves the shore. Mats unroll, baskets open, and smells mix into a low comfort cooked grain. Sun on ropes, fish cut without hurry. A crew offers extra cloth to sweeten a price for salted meat. A woman offers a bundle of herbs with a laugh if a man's nose is pink from too much sun. A child touches an ox-hide ingot as if it were a sleeping animal and is shooed away by a soft voice. No clerk's stamp cords here. The ledger is memory and neighborhood. If the captain is fair and polite, a discount appears like a gull that lands without warning and makes the scene feel more complete. In a moment, we will watch how price moves even before mouths open. Value comes hidden in effort. A jar from far away is worth more because bodies have lifted it many times from one curve of shore to another. The crew knows how to let this show without bragging. They set the amphora down with a careful hand and do not flinch if a buyer taps it hard to hear. the voice of the clay. A roll of cloth that has crossed to narrow seas carries another kind of worth, the story of safe landings and patient patching. Stories are not coins, but they loosen them. Many historians think most deals here were small, repeatable, and bound to faces. A man who cheats a stranger guards a coin. A man who treats a traveler fairly guards a path for next season. In a moment, we will recall our earlier jars of water, because cargo and care tie together under the same rules. A boat that carries weight must be more careful with thirst. Heavy loads make low freeboard, and low freeboard means any sloppy wave tries to visit the deck. The oarmaster reminds everyone that jars for cargo and jars for drinking must sleep apart. A cracked stopper on the first is a loss of coin. A cracked stopper on the second is a loss of strength. When they beach to rest from lifting, someone puts a strip of wet cloth over the mouths of the water jars and leaves them in shade. Habit is the fence between a full purse and a foolish story. In a moment, we will look at the way crews stack and wedge goods to keep the boat a friend. Balancing cargo is like calming a child. You place weight where weight comforts, not where it annoys. Amphorae in beds of sand near the keel. Copper plates layered like scales over a mat. Textiles in breathy bales tucked between to stop clatter. Spare oars where hands can find them when a squall decides to test the day. The steersman judges by feel. If the boat turns with more reluctance than yesterday, something is sulking in the way weight lies. A small shift of 3 jars forward or 2 to the left cures that sulk and gives the rudder back its easy song. In a moment, we will greet one of the delicate guests of the Bronze Age, a thing that glows without fire. Glass beads were small stars in this time, early and fussy. They were brittle on deck, better wrapped in cloth within a jar. Faience, the bright blue-green glass-like glaze from lands where river and desert talk, could ride in small amulets or cups. It made buyers smile in ways that cloth and oil did not. Such pieces needed shade, patience, and a porter's careful back. A careless set-down could turn them to sand again. The crew learns the fragility by breaking something once and never again. Broken beauty is a teacher no chant can drown out. In a moment, we will let timber step aboard, plain and heavy, because even a boat buys its own bones from other coasts. Wood goes where wood is rare. Tall masts do not grow on every island, and straight planks are not born from every hillside. A crew that brings lumber brings promises to builders and repairs to fishermen's winter plans. They bind the logs together into a raft that trails the hull like a stubborn calf, or they stack shorter pieces like bread loaves and lash them tight. The sea hates loose ends. A single untrimmed twig can saw a line raw in an afternoon. The carpenter, for once, has a smile for cargo, because nothing makes him happier than boards that will become ribs for someone else's boat, or a new yard for a sail that talked too much in last season's gale. In a moment, we will dock near a town that trades in words as much as in goods. Ports teach tongues. A sailor who learns the way to say good price and honest weight in 2 or 3 languages buys twice and is cheated half as often. Hand signals finish what words begin. Fingers touch chin for a greeting, palms open and up for a request to see the goods. Hands spread wide like the wings of a gull for a price that is too proud. Laughter is the best currency in arguments that shouldn't become fights. The oarmaster lets the crew scatter a little after the last jar is sold, not to spend, but to walk and learn which stall will still be honest next week. In a moment, we will show you the other kind of port, not stone, not market, but a quiet beach where everything depends on kindness. Some landings are not planned. A sail tears, a man falls and needs a healer's hands. A storm presses you into a cove you do not know. There are no scales here, no scribes, only a shepherd with eyes that hold questions. The captain steps ashore with open hands and an amphora of wine as a gift. The village watches 1 night, 2 nights, and then decides. If the crew leaves only footprints and speaks softly at the spring, they may be fed. If they take more than they trade, the next boat might meet stones instead of smiles. Many historians think these unwritten rules kept roots safe when kings changed and walls fell. In a moment, we will tuck a small figure into a corner of the cargo. Not heavy, not for sale, but for something else. A little image sits in a niche near the mast. It is not marked on any list. It may be a goddess who likes harbors, or a god who walks the wind down to human size, or a polished stone from a family beach. It travels with the jars and bales and plates, but belongs to no buyer. Before a run that asks courage, someone sets a drop of oil at its feet. After a safe landing, a crumb of bread. Cargo is for trade. This is for steadiness. The two do not argue. In a moment, we will step back to the palace quay one last time to feel how writing clips and releases effort. Scribes weigh with eyes and cords, press seals into damp clay, and balance columns with their neat reed pens. They do not know the taste of salt on a splinter, but they keep palaces from arguing with ships a month later. A cord stamped twice means a wrong. The captain frowns and asks for a second measure. A clay tag with a sign for a town you have not seen in years tells you a story of where the jar began. Sometimes the marks feel like a fence. Sometimes they feel like a bridge. The crew respects the scribe because the scribe can make a dispute small before it grows teeth. In a moment, we will let the markets fade and the ropes lie still, because trade calls for the sea's favor as much as for human skill. Cargo makes a day heavy and makes a return sweet. But luck and belief travel with weight even more closely than copper does. A good run can be turned by a sly reef. A fair price can be lost to a squall on the wrong side of a headland. That is why a crew that counts jars also learns to nod at small taboos and to carry little comforts that are not cloth or oil. The next stretch of our night belongs to those quiet agreements, with the water in the sky, the libations poured, the words not spoken on bad mornings, the charm tied where the sail rubs, and to the way those gestures keep minds steady when plans must bend. For now, let the amphory settle. The oxides doze in their lashings, and the market's voices dim to a murmur in your memory. In a moment, we will follow a thread of belief from the masthead down to a man's palm, and see how luck is courted, without waking pride. Let belief step aboard as lightly as a breeze. It does not argue with ropes or oars, it rides beside them. A small crew on a small sea cannot afford big magic, but it can keep small promises. Before a difficult run, the captain moistens the bow with a finger dipped in wine and lets a single drop fall to the water. The act is quiet. Even gulls ignore it. The men touch the gunwale in the same place they touched it yesterday, not because wood cares, but because hands do. In a moment, we will follow that drop into older names that traveled along these coasts, like cargo that never empties. Different shores greet the sea with different titles. A cove near a palace might whisper to a lord of the deep who shakes the earth when angry. A rocky island might call on a white-armed helper who once leaped from a cliff and was made kind to sailors. Farther east, a harbor shrine might carry the face of a god who loved cedar forests and strong ships, or of a goddess whose star rose bright before dawn and promised safe mornings. The crew does not argue which picture is right. They pour for the name the locals know, then for the name their mothers used, and feel covered by both. Soon we will glance at the mast, because belief often ties itself to things that move. An amulet hangs where the yard rubs, small enough to ignore when wind is good, easy to notice when minds are restless. It might be a pierced shell, blue-green faience bright as shallow water, a bead with an eye painted on, a scarab traded from a river culture that knows how to bake life into sand. Many historians think these tokens mattered less for power and more for timing. They reminded hands to check a line or smooth a fold, the way a ribbon on a finger reminds you to send a letter. The sailor who tied it there touches it once at dawn, and again at dusk, as if to clock in and clock out. In a moment, we will speak about words you do not speak, because silence also has its rights. Sailors love talk, but they make small fences around certain phrases. They avoid tempting the sea with a shout about an easy day. They do not call a headland tame while still outside its shadow. In some crews, a man's first voyage stays unnamed until he has slept ashore twice. In others, a coil of rope is stepped over, not on, as if to respect its work. We cannot prove every habit for this century, but many sea cultures build these soft taboos, and it is likely the Bronze Age had its own. A quiet rule carries less weight than a broken rib, but protects more days than any charm can count. In a moment, we will let music join belief, because the oarmaster's chant is also a prayer. You can hum, The chant that held the stroke all morning turns into a low song at dusk. It thanks the water for behaving and asks the wind not to change its mind while the porridge thickens. No one calls it a hymn. No one needs to. Singing gives fear a place to live without growing. It works the way a lullaby works on a waking child, and on the parent who sings it. The song names the cove, the headland, the star that rose when the anchor touched bottom. Memory braided into melody becomes a kind of offering. In a moment, we will walk up a beach to a shrine that smells of oil and smoke because land keeps long ledges of sea vows. A strip of coasts may wear many small shrines like beads on a string. One keeps a pile of pebbles that grow by one for every safe return. Another keeps little clay boats with names scratched in, placed after storms that took other holes. The crew steps in with salt in their hair and smoke on their clothes and leaves, a token they agreed on last season. A patch of sailcloth with a thread of oil drawn across it, or a model of an oxide ingot cut thin, or a simple copper pin from a shirt. If the voyage was especially kind, the captain promises to bring a full jar next time, or to help repair the shrine's roof. A vow like that binds future hands to good work. Soon we will come back to the boat, because ritual also sits on deck. In the most ordinary motions, a first bite of the evening meal might go to the bow, set on the plank, and allowed to fall into the dark water before any man eats. The first step off the boat at a new shore might be right foot, not left, simply because a season once went better that way, and no one wishes to ask why. When a sleeve catches on a cleat, the sailor swears by a phrase that smooths the sleeve, rather than cursing the cleat, as if to remind both that they share a job. Belief here is manners for a house with a dangerous flaw. It keeps tempers down, and attention up in a moment. We will look at fear straight on, because fear is the real thing. These acts answer. Fear on a small ship is not loud. It is a tightening in the throat when the wind backs suddenly, or when a line sings in a new pitch. A charm gives the hand something to hold while the mind keeps working. A libation slows breathing before a risky turn. A taboo about careless words keeps boasting from making fools of men who know better. The sea does not bow to these gestures, but the crew does, and in bowing, they find the posture that saves them. Heads up, eyes open, kindness ready. Think of a pilot who taps the instrument panel before takeoff, not because it needs it, but because he needs to feel his part. In a moment, we will consider luck, the hardest partner, and how sailors tried to hire it with small wages. Luck is a coin with no mint. You cannot earn it by muscle. You can invite it by steadiness, by clean work, by treating docks and shrines and neighbors with respect, so that on a day when a rope snaps, a stranger runs to grab the loose end, you keep the mast. Many historians think that what we call luck in old tales is often the echo of network skin you greeted last season. A scribe who remembers your fairness and weighs your jar with a generous eye. A fisherman who does not cut your anchor line when your boats tangle at dawn. Ritual oils the social parts, so the physical parts meet help when they need it. In a moment, we will turn from single acts to patterns, because belief is also calendars and choices. A crew might avoid sailing on the morning after a certain festival, not from law, but from custom to many men awake, and to many minds not. They might favor departures at first light, on the 7th day, after a new moon, because the tide in some places does a kind thing then, or because the song says it does. They might scrub the hull with special care before the first long run of summer, a cleanliness that feels like reverence and acts like speed. These calendars blur line between ritual and maintenance until both wear the same face. The hull does not care which name you speak as long as you keep your promises to it. In a moment, we will return to a little object near the mast, because it hides a story about hope. The small image near the mast is not always a god. Sometimes it is a pebble from a beach, where a mother once waved a boy away to his first voyage. Sometimes it is a knot tied by a child who is told this would keep father safe until the knot is untied at home. Such tokens embarrass no one. They remind the crew that the sea takes people who are loved, and that love is a reason to row well, to be gentle when a man slips, to spare a sharp word that helps nothing. You can hear the callback from our health talk here. Kindness is also safety. In a moment, we will let the horizon darken a little, because belief feels strongest when risk walks closer. Storm signs give rituals teeth. When clouds thicken and the wind shifts without a messenger ripple, the captain does not pour a drink and hope. He shortens sail, checks lashings, and chooses the nearest cove named in the oarmaster's oldest song. Someone lays a sprig from a shoreline bush in the bow, not to please a god into changing weather, but to mark that they have changed their minds and will live to trade another day. Ritual here is a way to say, enough with dignity. It draws a circle around prudence, so pride stays out. In a moment, we will pull these threads together and turn our face toward home. Because return is the truest offering a crew can make. Safe landfall makes every small vow feel wise. A libation poured at dawn tastes like gratitude at dusk. The amulet tied where the yard rubs swings easily instead of scraping, and the men touch it as they duck beneath the sail to sleep. On the beach, the shrine receives its pebble or its patch, and the crew eats in a quiet that has laughter inside it. All day they tended wood, rope, and flesh. All day they tended luck with manners and songs. None of it guaranteed a calm sea. All of it made a calm mind. In a moment, we will look past the cove into the darker water, where reefs, squalls, and unfriendly boats live, because belief and rhythm and care must meet risk with open eyes, and the final part of our night will fold danger and return into one slow, honest ending. Let the water darken in tone as afternoon stretches, the air a little heavier, and the boat a little quieter. Risk does not shout first. It clears its throat. The steersman feels a small change through the paired oars, a new tightness in the chop, a line of ripples marching at an angle that was not there an hour ago. The captain glances at a headland that looked friendly at noon, and now seems to lean. This is the part of a day when a crew's earlier care begins to pay for itself. In a moment, we will follow them toward the first danger that nearly always hides in beauty. Reefs speak in two voices. In calm, they paint the sea with pale green, and call you closer. In breeze, they throw broken water like lace that looks thin and is not. The steersman steers by color and by memory. The oarmaster tightens the chant, so blades enter and leave clean. Because a sloppy splash can hide the hiss that warns of rock. The anchor is teased ready, rope flaked without knots. A small ritual of hands that we have watched since dawn. If the keel whispers to weed, nobody panics. They ship oars on the inside, pull off softly, and drift to deeper shade with the patience we have met again and again. In a moment, the sky will change the story more quickly. Squalls arrive like a stranger opening a door in the wrong direction. A line of darker water runs toward you. The wind backs a hand's width, and the sail goes from soft to stubborn in a breath. The captain speaks to short words. The oarmaster answers by turning song into signals. The sailmistress spills wind by easing a line, not jerking it. Oars come down on one side to help the bow through, then up again so the cloth can work without argument. Restraint is the cureless sail. Lower speed, more room because a small hull cannot win a contest of pride with a gust. In a moment, we will notice the shore, which can be friend and trap on the same day. A lee shore is land on the wrong side of wind. It looks like safety and is not. Waves steepen as they run out of room, and each one tries to place you on rocks you admired. That morning, the steersman turns outward to find water with longer breath. The oarmaster saves lungs for a firm set at the right angle, and the anchor waits as a last word if a line of reef blocks the turn. You can hear our navigation lesson inside this. Keep two signs before you act: color and sound, wind and swell. None of them ask to be trusted alone. In a moment, we will let a simpler danger step in a tool that fails and see the same calm cure.n or can split along the grain with a noise like a sigh. It is not disaster if the boat's habits are good. The rower lifts the lame blade straight, up so it does not tangle. His partner shortens one stroke. A spare oar comes forward from where it sleeps under lashings. The carpenter wraps the split with a collar if the water is kind, or waits for beach if it is not, and the beat regains its old face. A mast can complain too, and when it does, the yard comes down and the boat becomes arms and breath again, with no drama. It is the same song we have heard all night. Repair early, forgive quickly, keep moving. In a moment, we will let a darker boat slide across our thought and pass, because not all dangers are made of weather and wood. Unfriendly boats are part of any coast where wealth floats. The The crew knows the signs, a hull that shadows you without reason, oars that match your pace, a sail that turns when you turn. The captain's first weapon is time. He chooses a cove, with a narrow mouth and friendly eyes on the shore, or he makes for a palace harbor where scribes and guards stand within shouting distance. If forced, a small ship can throw weight overboard, cheaply bales of brushwood, kept for this purpose, to make speed for a short burst, then recover them later on a quiet beach. Many historians think such tricks were wiser than any fight. A jar sold tomorrow is better than a jar broken today. In a moment, we will consider a hazard so ordinary it hides fatigue and how it turns small errors into large ones. Tired hands let rope bite skin. Tired eyes misread cat's paws. Tired pride argues with whether the oarmaster's task becomes gentle sabotage of fatigue. Shorten the set before minds admit they are spent. Pass a fig at the right stroke. Call the tune that lengthens the release and steals rest where nobody notices. The captain's task is to accept a nearer cove and a smaller profit when the sky grows ambiguous. The ritual's task our drop of wine, our amulet rotes here, as a form of humility that feels like faith and acts like sense. In a moment, we will step onto sand in a hurry, because emergency landings have their own choreography. A quick beaching asks for nerve without speed. The steersman lines the bow with the gentlest water between bars. The crew rows light and square to keep control. Then all blades lift as the wave under the stern commits. The anchorman leaps first with the rope, runs up the beach, and turns to dig in and hold. The whole rests with a rush, and then a sigh. There is no cheer, only workyard down, sail bundled, wedges under, a look at the keel, and a hand for the man who fell at the last stumble. After the pot simmers and the heart slows, someone takes a pebble to the little shrine up the dune. You can feel how belief and habit share a bench at moments like this. In a moment, we will let night fall for real, because risk changes shape. In the dark, night row is not common by choice. If it comes, the crew undresses the day into fewer parts. No jokes on the benches, no loose gear, no long words. The steersman keeps the bear at the same low height. The oarmaster's drum takes the place of voice when wind eats sound. And the captain counts coves by smell and by the memory of how long the stroke runs between headlands. If doubt grows, they turn a little seaward to Byroom and wait for the first grey before committing to a line of breakers. The lesson returns as patient as tide. Delay is sometimes the fastest way home. In a moment, we will feel the return itself, because every danger has been held in mind only to make this ending sweet. A safe landfall tastes like warm water after a thirsty hour. The headland that leaned at noon now looks like a door, the cove like a bed. Neighbors lift hands in welcome if you have been kind in other seasons, and the boy who once learned to coil a rope on your deck is now tall enough to take a jar on his shoulder. The amulet near the mast gets a touch from every hand that passes under it. The jar count meets the scribe's cord with numbers that please both. Or in a market without cords, the bread is thick and the price fair. The boat is pulled higher than usual, as if to say, not today. See, in a moment, we will answer the loud title we began with in a soft voice. Would you last a day? You might, if the crew lent you their rhythm. You would eat barley and olives, drink water that tastes of clay and ship, and learn to pull smooth instead of hard. You would listen to a chant that turns hours into something a body can hold. And you would feel the steersman's small corrections erase your big mistakes. You would be surprised by how small the world of deck, oar, and breath can feel, and by how large the world of sky, color, and smell becomes when you use it to steer. A day could be yours. In a moment, we will fold that day into a season and see why the second part of our title still stands, to last a season. You would need more than goodwill. You would need to love caution the way land loves walls, to patch early and praise small fixes, to read the sky as if it were a neighbor's face, to keep a joke gentle when tempers fray, to eat evenly instead of grandly, to let ritual teach humility, to turn away from pride without feeling shame, to beach early when a lee shore lies, to call for help in a strange cove with your hands open, and to carry other people's weight without counting. These are simple things, but they add up to the quiet courage that returns boats In a moment, we will set the tools down and let the image of a small hull sleeping on sand end our night. The resin hardens. The sail breathes out its day and sags into a tent. The anchor rope lies like a sleeping snake with its head tied high, and the men lie with their heels toward the foam as we have seen them do. A bowl is passed one last time and then pushed toward the bow with a bit of porridge left for the water. The star path we learned reappears, the bare patient, the east, promising a glow that will wake this world again. We have followed risk and return without shouting, because crews like this did not live by noise, they lived by care. When you ask for the rap, we will close our small open loops and leave you with the sea's quieter truths. For now, let the tide hush itself and the breath of the oars fade to the memory of a drum that knew when to start and when to sleep. Asterisk. Let the water go still in your mind for a moment. The drum is quiet. The resin has cooled. Oars lie like sleeping limbs along the benches, and the square of flax breathes out the day and rests as a low roof. We have walked the whole circle with this small crew, from the first pale strokes to the last spoon of porridge, and the sea is no longer a wall but a long, slow road. In the beginning we asked how they ate and drank without turning sick, how they found their way with no compass, and what a full day felt like in lungs and hands. Now, in the hush, the answers sit where you can touch them. Food and water were simple, careful, and constant. Bread that softened in a shared cup, olives bright with brine, dried fish folded into porridge at dusk, and figs saved for the hour when arms grew slow. Water in jars kept cool with shade and damp cloth. Wine cut thin to tame stale taste, and tiny things that make bellies turn. Small sips, many times, salt rinsed from wrists with a mouthful, then a rub of oil, cold on the water, hot on the sand. When rain came, the sail turned into a clean gutter, and the jars drank first. That is how a crew stayed steady in a world made of salt. In a moment, you can feel your own breath match that steadying. Direction was a braid, not a single line. They read the coast by color and sound, lined up temple and cypress to slip into, channels that do not appear on maps, tasted the bottom with a small weight when eyes lied, and felt swells that kept the memory of storms far away. By night, they watched the bear keep its slow circle, and let rising clusters mark time like bells. Wind had accents, smell carried land. Birds drew short dotted lines toward shore. They did not draw straight paths. They corrected, and corrected again, like a walker at dusk, who trusts both ground and sky. The chant left minds free to notice. The noticing made the map dot and the work. It felt quiet and exact, smooth over hard, sets and rests like breathing. The steersman's hands erased clumsy moments before they became trouble. The carpenter's warm pitch, worked into a seam at dawn, was worth more than a poem because it bought an entire day of grace. They beached at dusk because fire belongs on sand, because fresh water lives on land, because sleep under a low sail turns bodies back into friends for tomorrow. A boat this small cannot afford pride. It travels on patience, on early repairs, on a joke kept soft, on the habit of leaving a cove a little better than it was found. If you listen closely, you can hear why this matters now. The sea changes shape, but the craft that carried these people across it is the same craft that carries teams through any hard thing. Routine that protects, attention that notices in time, and kindness as a form of safety. Paper where you have it, savings where you can keep them, and dignity everywhere else. We met those tools in other nights, and they sit here on the deck too. A bicycle rides better with a drop of oil before the chain complains. A hull lives longer when hands mend while a seam still whispers. A day goes lighter when you share the fig before anyone asks. We set out asking if you would last a day. You could, if the crew lent you their rhythm and the weather chose to be ordinary. To last a season, you would need to love their caution as much as their courage. But you have already borrowed their quiet. You have eaten evenly, drunk wisely, watched the line of shore, matched your breath to the chant. If you enjoy this pace, you can subscribe, and we can slip out again on another calm night to a river, road, a caravan track, a monastery kitchen, wherever slow hands make hard work gentle. For now, let the cove in your mind grow darker, let the anchor rope lie slack, Let the star path we learned become a soft ceiling. Your breath can take the beat the Allmaster kept and thin it, slower, slower, until there is only the hush of a small wave under a small hull on a kind beach. The sea will keep the watch. Rest.